first thing I'm going to say is that the first part of the presentation that we're going to do is on anti-aging. And, what I try and ask people is that, have you ever thought that when you're looking at aging, when you're looking at the whole thing about aging, why is it that you get to be, when you have a baby, right? He's 3 months old. He's 3.5 months old, right? And then all of a sudden, they're 5 years old. They're, and they made it to 21, right? And then all of a sudden they're 30, and oh man, made it to 50, right? But when you get to be, 70, 80, all of a sudden you start to feel like, oh, I'm supposed to feel old, right? Did anybody ever notice that? That people tend to do that. My mom and dad, my dad just turned 80 in December. And the doctors up in the United States where I'm from, they just said, well, you're 80, you need to take this prescription. And my dad says, well, but I don't have anything wrong. And they told him, they said, but you're 80 years old. You need to take that. What do you think of that? Is that good?
They should take tests.
Absolutely not. They need to look at people from a viewpoint of what's wrong with them and individualize it, but they don't tend to do it. So aging, is it inevitable? Well, we are going to get older, and we are going to live longer than our parents did, and chances are we'll live longer than our grandparents. But the thing about it is that as we look at this, and hopefully I can get this across to you, is that there's some practical solutions that we can do that we maybe can slow down the whole idea of you don't have to feel old anymore, right? Like the new 40 is 60. Right? When you get to be 60, that's the new 40. That's what we want to do. We want to get people so that they look and feel and act like they're still young when they're old. So what I did next is I brought a video that I found, and I really thought this kind of gives people an idea. So we'll watch this.
What will your last 10 years look like? Will you be quick enough for a game of tag with your grandchild? Strong enough to embrace every moment? Will you grow old with vitality? Or get old with disease? It's time to decide. The average Canadian will spend their last 10 years in sickness. Change your future at makehealthlast.ca.
Right? Do you want to be the guy that's playing with his grandchildren, enjoying life with his family, or the guy that's in the nursing home, right? And all of you are fairly healthy. I'm sure that we all have something wrong with us, but now's the time that you want to address it. You don't want to wait until something's wrong and then have to go after it. Next slide, Katie. So when you look at anti-aging, and we talk about anti-aging, there's animals like jellyfish. When I was out fishing with Trevor the other day, we saw jellyfish. Jellyfish are like almost immortal. They never change from when they're a baby jellyfish to when they're an old jellyfish. Biologically, they're the same. The bowhead whale, they just seem to live forever, centuries. And you can't tell the difference. You take a look at turtles. They say that Charles Darwin's pet tortoise is still alive. Right? How many years ago was Charles Darwin around? How many hundreds of years ago? Right? And his pet tortoise is still alive. Lobsters, they have more sex the older they get. Wouldn't that be cool? You get to be 90, you have more sex than you did when you were 20? That'd be kind of fun. You wouldn't remember it, but. But bacteria are an interesting creature, right? If you take a look at a bacteria that is formed today, and you compare it to the bacteria when it's 14 days old or 20 days old, biologically under a microscope, they look identical. They haven't changed. So why is it that we age? Why do we get old? Why do we age? Why do we have the aging diseases? So these are some things I'm going to try and get people to think about. Katie? And so Benjamin Franklin, pretty smart guy, and he wrote a lot of things, but he said that all diseases can be cured. And at that time, he said, except that of old age. And I want to get people to start thinking about maybe if we address aging as the disease, maybe it'll make a difference. My boy, who's 26 now, he's in medical school. He's in his third year to medical school, and I was talking to him about 10 years ago, and I've always kind of been into this anti-aging. Originally I wanted to live to be 100 years old. And at 100, I wanted to be as healthy as I possibly could. I didn't want to have anything wrong with me. And now it's changed. I want to be 110. I've added 10 years to it. I'm 55 now, so I'm at the halfway point, right? And I really feel now, with some of the things that I'm doing, I feel like I'm healthier. I feel like I'm stronger today than I was 20 years ago when I was 35, right? And when I'm 70, I want to feel stronger at 70 than I do at 55. But my son said to me, he said, Dad, he said, why do you want to grow old? He said, all that means is that you're going to have to be on all these medications. You're going to have all those old age diseases. And he was looking at things from a different point of view. And he's saying, why do you want that? And some people I talk to, I treat a lot of people. I treat some people who are 98 years old, patients of mine who are 98. I treat some 90-year-olds, some 92 years olds, and I ask them all kinds of questions, and because I want to learn from them, right? I mean, what's the best way of learning how to get old? Talk to an old person, right? And so I'm asking my 98-year-old friend. I said, what's the worst thing about being 98 years old? What do you think his answer was? All his friends were gone, right? And so he's lonely. He's there by himself. And so Katie and I were talking about it this morning, that wouldn't it be nice? Here we are in this room, all of us, and even though Trevor stole my apple pie, we'll let you stay with us. But I'm just kidding. But wouldn't it be nice if here, us group of people, that I can be back down here speaking in 20 years, and we're all going to be sitting here, we're going to be a bigger group because we all want to find out how to stay healthy and live longer. And so that's kind of like the idea that I want to project, so that when I'm 98 years old, I'm hanging around with a bunch of people that I've known for years, right? Wouldn't that be fun? So, the next slide. I'm one of those weird ducks, when I went to school, I enjoyed math, I enjoyed science, and I went to school for mechanical engineering when I first graduated from high school. And I got into my last year of engineering, and I just realized, this isn't what I want to do. I want to work with people. And so I switched into chiropractic, and I graduated from chiropractic college in 1987 when I was 26 years old. So I was a doctor when I was 26. And opened up my own practice. I didn't know what I was doing. I had never taken a business class in my life, and I opened up my own practice, and I got kind of bored with it, and I started doing what was called functional medicine, right? Where instead of looking at wait until your heart started to fail, why don't we do some things before it starts to fail? Why don't we look at things from a little bit different aspect of it? And so that's kind of how I started to attack it. And then around the time of the new millennium in 2000. I really got into anti-aging. And it wasn't really popular back then. When I said anti-aging, people would look at me and they go, Oh yeah, you're one of those guys. And they kind of gave me a weird look, like, yeah, you want to live forever, and that's what I have on my business card. On the front of my business card, it says, "Have you ever thought about living forever?" Right? Has anybody here? Have you ever thought about living forever? Right? I'm sure most of you have. You just don't dare raise your hand, but right? I mean, you thought about it, right? But you didn't raise your hand.
I thought about it from a soul perspective that we do.
Yeah. But that's what people say, is they'll say, well, I thought about it from the soul, there's a spiritual side of it. Some people will say, oh, yeah, I don't want to do that. And I didn't ask if, how you thought about it. I just asked, did you think about it? And the answer is usually yes, people have thought about it. But have you ever thought, besides the spiritual side of things, the soul side of things, if you were to live forever, Shane, what would you need?
Lots of money, of course.
Lots of money, right? Why?
Just to sort of, I know money's not everything, but it helps us in a sense to, live better, enjoy life better, travel.
Sure it does, right? So like Shane just said, if I'm going to live to be 100 years old, do I want to sit in some flat apartment somewhere in the middle of a city? No way. I want to be doing like Jim is, going to Cambodia, and I want to go to Thailand, and I want to go to the Antarctica. I want to go to Russia. I want to go to Europe. I want to go to the North Pole. There's so many places that I want to see. Guess what that takes? Money, right? You know the other thing that costs money is staying healthy, right? Here in Australia, I don't know if it's different here than it is in the States, but in the United States, we've got a healthcare system, and they'll pay for you if you're sick, right? Is that how it is here? Have you ever gone to your insurance company or gone to the doctor and say, yeah, my insurance is going to pay for it. I want to do something that keeps me healthy. Do they cover that? No, right? You guys maybe have a little better than we do there, but if we want to do that, like if you're sick up there, not only does your insurance company start to kick in, right? But a lot of the churches, if you belong to a church, they'll throw a fundraiser. Kurt got cancer. We're going to throw a fundraiser for him. We're going to raise some money. But go to your church and say, hey, I'd like you to have a fundraiser. I want to live forever. You going to raise any money? Are they going to raise any money for you?
Maybe on Kickstarter. You might get some people interested.
But not to live forever. But they're not going to do that, right? And that's the whole thing. So I try and tell people that you need money. And then the other thing that you need is you need your health. Right? Because who wants to live forever if you're stuck in a wheelchair like that guy in the video, right? If you're rolling around and somebody has to feed you and somebody has to change your diapers and things like that. It's like, who wants that? Who wants that? I want to be fishing with Trevor. We're going to have a big boat. Right? We're going to be catching big fish, not those little ugly ones that we caught out here in the bay. But, right? And we're going to be having some fun. And so that's what I'm kind of looking at. 2 months from now, I'm going to open up a stem cell clinic. We're actually going to do stem cell injections into shoulders and knees and backs and things like that. We're going to be doing some little bit different therapy that's kind of on the edge, right? Kind of on the edge. But it's really when you start looking at it, it's really a great therapy for certain things. So the future, I'm just like, I tell people, I say, Dennis, if you're going to dream, why not dream big, right? It takes the same amount of time. You dream a little tiny dream or a great big dream, right? And so I look at my 3 boys. I've got 3 boys that are in their 20s, and that's what I've got them to do. They're always dreaming. My oldest boy, he thinks he's still going to be Batman someday, the real Batman, not the one on TV. And we look at things like that, and it's just crazy. And Katie and I were talking about it at lunch today. Think about it. When you're a kid, Margaret, what'd your mom tell you? Use your imagination, right? Use your imagination.
Yep.
Yeah. But now as an adult, when you're using imagination, what are your friends telling you now?
Don't be silly.
Don't be silly. Don't daydream. Right? Why is it when you're a kid, they tell you use your imagination, but now as an adult they don't want you to use your imagination anymore. They want everybody to be the same. Get in line. Get in line. Be a sheeple. You know, just get in line. And that's how we go through life. And so I'm trying to get people to think a little bit differently than that. And when we start looking at the whole idea about increasing somebody's life, you know, somebody says to me, they say, well, when you take a look at life now, right? We've extended life. People are living longer. But this over here, the red, the years of being diseased, is what we've extended, right? So the ideal outcome is that we're going to extend somebody's life, but we're going to shorten up the disease years, right? Wouldn't it be nice if all of a sudden you're finding that you're healthy, you're playing tennis, you're playing golf, you're fishing, you're traveling the world, and one day you wake up and you go, yeah, I'm a little tired today. I think next week's it. Wouldn't that be a cool way of going through it? And all of a sudden, you know, this ideal situation, the years of death are slower, but what we're seeing is something more like this. This is what people are imagining. This is what people are imagining right here. Oh yeah, we're going to extend their life, and they're going to be sicker longer. And so that's what I'm trying to, as I'm going around the country, up in the States, and I'm teaching people this. The reason that I'm down here is maybe get you to think about what can you do to make it so it's more like this situation. And so, anybody have a plasma TV? Right? You ever throw a brick at it? Right? Why not? You're going to bust the screen, right? And I don't care how expensive a plasma TV you got, it's not going to repair itself, is it? Not going to do it. Dennis, you ever broke your arm? Broke a bone?
Only my toe.
You did? Did it heal up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you look at the human body, and the human body has the amazing ability that it can heal itself up. And so when we start looking at things like that, we got to start looking at things like, I like old cars. I like to work on old cars. And you take an old rusty rust bucket like this and you fix it up. But what if you would have taken care of it from the day one? What if you had a way that you knew that if you waxed that car and you changed the oil like your dad told you to, that thing would last forever? I mean, how many people here, you all have cars, right? Okay. Did you ever just drive your car to see what would happen if you didn't change the oil?
No.
Why not? John, why not?
I use royal oil.
Right?
I think that helps a lot more.
Because you didn't want to look stupid to your dad, too, because your dad would have kicked your butt because he taught you that you changed the oil.
He did. And another thing he taught us to do was put the oil on the wooden fence in Dandenong, and that fence lived from 1955 to 1995, and I pulled it down. The palers are still good.
It's still good. There you go.
Yeah, with old oil out of the Vanguard, an old Vanguard.
So you can keep your car looking like this versus looking like this. I just fixed up a 1955 Studebaker, if anybody knows what a Studebaker is. Yeah. But I just fixed up a 1955 Studebaker. I'm going to put it on the road. It was last licensed in 1965. It sat in a barn for 20 years. My dad picked it up. It sat in another barn for 30 years. I pulled it out of the barn after sitting around for 50 years. And I've got the thing on the road, and it looks pretty darn good. Right? Wouldn't you say it looks pretty good? It's going to be a fun car to drive. I put a different motor in it, so it's going to be pretty hot. It's going to be fast to drive. You want to hit the next slide? And so Angela Epstein, who's a scientist, she said that they've studied disease so much, they understand when your body's going to start falling apart. Each organ, they can understand it. And so when we start looking at it, the brain and the nervous system, right? We can see that at the age of 20, the neurons start to decline. At the age of 20. Right? No wonder at the age of 50 you got Sometimers disease, right? Not Alzheimer's, just Sometimers. You're forgetting some things, right? But they're finding that teeth are so important to your brain. Right? That if you're not chewing your food, if you lose your teeth, chances are it's not going to be very long and you're going to have dementia. Right? The teeth are related to your dementia. Right? And so really important that you take care of that. When you take a look at the skeletal muscles and the bones start to fall apart. By the age of 40, you're losing 0.5 to 2% of your muscle mass every single year. What would you think if all of a sudden a product came along that could help you build that muscle mass back? 60 years old, you don't have to go to the gym, but you can build muscle. Who'd want something like that? Right? Do you know other people that want something like that? You're dang right. That's why the National Institutes of Aging funded $21 million worth of research into developing a product that'll make your body build muscle. It's really cool when you start looking at it. You look at the digestive system, and I think the digestive system is so strong. I was at an anti-aging seminar down in Orlando, Florida last April, and they were talking about how the healthy bacteria in your gut are so important that the bacteria actually decide what mood you're going to have for that day. Right? So if your spouse is having a bad day, you should start thinking, what's wrong with your gut? Right? Would you ever ask that? Would you ever ask your spouse that?
Not before, but now I know that.
Now you know you would. You say, I need to make you something else to eat today. But it's so important. And all these chemicals that are in our food, right? And it's no different down here than it is up there. When I was flying down, I was talking to a guy from New Zealand, and I was always taught as a doctor that the best beef you could get came from New Zealand. They had the strictest cattle laws. They didn't allow any antibiotics. They didn't allow any hormones, anything like that. And I'm talking to this guy. He said, oh yeah, that changed about 20 years ago. The beef from New Zealand is just as bad as the beef from Argentina, just as bad as the beef from the United States. It's all loaded with chemicals. It's all coming out of feedlots where they're walking around in manure pits that are 20 feet deep. Like, what's wrong with us? Why would we eat meat that's walking around and that kind of stuff, right? No wonder so many people are going vegan. They see that kind of stuff happening. And so that destroys the gut, it destroys the liver, and that's so important. We start looking at our lungs, right? At the age of 40, the cartilage and the muscles in your chest, it's gotten so hard that you can't take a deep breath in. Remember when you were 10 years old and you'd be with your buddies and you'd try and take that deep breath in? You remember that? And you do that with your friends? You ever do that? Yeah. Try and do it now. You'll pass out, right? Because you can't suck that air in. You start looking at the heart. Cardiovascular disease. After World War I, all these American doctors were over in Europe helping, doing stuff in the war effort back in World War I, and they learned about this German machine, this EKG machine, and they brought it back to the States. And it wasn't the FDA then, but whatever agency it was of the government that said, hey, we got to see if this stuff really works. It took them 5 years to find enough people with heart disease to actually approve the EKG machine. 5 years. How long would it take today? 5 minutes. They could test all of us here. Well, maybe not us because most of us take good products, but you could go out there in the hallway and you could probably in 5 minutes, you could find enough people to prove the EKG machine works, right? And so our heart starts to fall apart, and now 20-year-olds are having heart disease, right? The kidneys. Wow, the kidneys are so important. And it balances the pH in your body. We've all heard of people saying, oh, this alkaline water is so good for you, and you want to have the alkaline, you want to have the right acid, and you want to have this, you want to have that. Your kidneys maintain this acid-alkaline balance all the time. If it gets out of whack, right? You drink 1 can of soda. We call it soda up there. I don't know, what do you guys call it down here? Pop?
Fizzy water.
Fizzy water?
Soft drink.
Soft drink? Yeah. So you drink a soft drink, right? And do you know how many, 1 12-ounce can, do you know how much water, pH balanced water you have to drink to balance out 1 soft drink? 30. 30 glasses of water to balance out 1 soft drink. Holy cow, no wonder so much of us are sick. We have kidney disease. Kidney disease is one of the top 10 killers up in the States. Crazy. And we sell so much soda now, it's just amazing. And I don't know if you guys do the same thing here, but it is a big seller because of that. People are just addicted to it. Your skin, right? And we talk about anti-aging. Most people are like, I already use a skincare product. right? That's what they think of right away. They think of how they look. You look at the hair, right? And your hair, it starts to break down. And most of these shampoos that we have with sodium lauryl sulfate in them, so all these chemicals, what it does is it changes the cycle. The hair has a growth and hibernation cycle, right? And when you have a shampoo and hair care products that don't have the right ingredients, they're made with toxins and things like that, it changes that, right? And it makes the hair so it starts going into a different growth cycle, and it's bad. And then you start to see people that their voice starts to change, right? So it's all predictable that we're seeing that things are happening. The vision starts to fall apart. Hearing starts to go, right? Taste and smell. And we're seeing that you can predict when this is going to happen. And so a linear thinking is basically this, is that we take a look at what's going on in the United States and we say, here's what they're doing. We come over here into Australia and we just say, well, here's what they're doing in the United States, right? We go over to China and we go, here's what they're doing in the United States, here's what they're doing in Australia, it must be working, right? That's linear thinking. And so if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you got, right? And all of a sudden people are sick here just like they are up in the States. And, you know, I drive around, I see you guys have McDonald's just like we do. And just, you know, you start looking at some of the stuff. But so when we start talking about what we're here for today, all of you are here listening to me talk on this, which means that you're thinking vertically, right? You're thinking with vertical change. You're saying, we're going to do something different, right? And if you do something a little bit different, some of your friends are going to look at you a little bit weird, right? And they may not agree with you, right? When I told people that I was going to get into anti-aging medicine and I start learning about this product and that product and all that, most of my friends, they just like, they don't want to have anything to do with it. You know, what's your flavor of the day today, they tell me. What are you selling? And I said, I'm not selling anything, but I'm going to show you some stuff, right? And now 20 years later, they're coming up and they're saying, well, how come you look younger than you did 20 years ago from 20 years ago and we're not? How come we're falling asleep at 10 o'clock at night and you just seem to go and go and go? Katie and I are emailing at each other at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? Because she doesn't sleep either. But you got to start thinking with vertical thinking, and you start thinking that some people you know, why do they never seem to age, right? What's going on with them? Why don't they age? Why don't they look older? And so genetics plays a part with it, and genetics is like a 10 to 20%, right? But it's the environment that you're putting that genetics in. And some people, like, anybody here remember George Burns? Right? And so I remember did you ever watch Johnny Carson, the late night show? Okay, so it was a late night TV show up in America, and Johnny Carson was interviewing George Burns the year that he turned 100. And I remember watching this episode, and Johnny Carson asked George Burns, well, what's your secret? And George Burns said, I just don't listen to my doctors. As he had a big stogie in one hand and a martini in the other hand, right? That's what George Burns did. But I don't know if he ever actually smoked a cigar. He just carried it around, maybe chewed on it a little bit. But he always had a martini in his hand. And you start looking at that, he had the right kind of genetics that he could do the wrong things and still live to be 103. Right? Most of us don't have those genetics. So we have to look at what can we do with our environment to make it so that we can live longer and healthier and change those kinds of things. Sugar is so bad for us. Sugar is one thing that it's actually a toxin. When you look at it, it affects every cell in your body, not in a good way. And I remember looking through some old magazines I picked up at an auction sale up there. This farmer, he had big boxes of these old magazines from the 1950s and 1960s, and I was paging through them, and they had advertisements in there and they showed the guy on the beach. You remember this ad? And it showed the big guy kicking sand in the face of the little guy. Remember that ad? And basically it said, eat more sugar. Right? If you go back and look, back in the early 1900s, the average person, I'm going to talk about America since that's where I'm from, the average American back in the early 1900s, we consumed 12 pounds of sugar a year. So about a pound a month, that was it. How much do you think we consume now?
Pound a day almost.
144 pounds a year. So we took and we multiplied it that much, right? 12 pounds a month. Holy cow, I mean, no wonder we're sick. No wonder we're all fat, right? Because we're all eating all this stuff. And you start looking at it. Wheat, right? Wheat turns into sugar. Celery turns into sugar. Bread turns into sugar. And our bodies just weren't designed for that. So what happens is it affects everything. It affects your hormones. It affects your mood. It affects your metabolism. It just throws everything out of whack. And again, you start looking at that stuff. It's no wonder that we're getting more sick. Right? We're living longer. But the price we pay right now is that because we're doing things wrong, we're not actually living any healthier.